Few films have ever captured the imagination of audiences quite like Doctor Zhivago. Released in 1965 and directed by the legendary David Lean, the film transformed Boris Pasternak's sweeping story into one of the most recognizable romantic epics in cinema history. Its snowy landscapes, unforgettable music, sweeping trains, political upheaval, and heartbreaking love story between Yuri Zhivago and Lara Antipova created an image of Russia that stayed in the minds of millions of viewers. But more than 6 decades after the film first reached audiences, something else about Dr. Zhivago has become almost as fascinating as the movie itself: the lives of the actors who brought its characters to life. Some went on to become international legends. Some deliberately walked away from Hollywood. Some experienced painful personal struggles. And several members of the cast eventually passed away after long and sometimes difficult lives. But there is an important truth that often gets lost in sensational versions of this story. Not everyone from the principal cast died. By 2025, Julie Christie, Geraldine Chaplin, Tom Courtenay, and Rita Tushingham were still alive, carrying the memory of one of cinema's greatest productions into another generation. The story of the Dr. Zhivago cast is therefore not simply a story of tragedy. It is a story of fame, aging, survival, loss, artistic reinvention, and the strange way cinema can preserve people forever at the age they were when the cameras were rolling. When Dr. Zhivago was being made, nobody could have known that the young faces appearing on screen would eventually become part of film history. Omar Sharif was only in his early 30s when he became Yuri Zhivago, while Julie Christie was in her 20s when she stepped into the role of Lara. Geraldine Chaplin, Tom Courtenay, and Rita Tushingham were also young performers at a time when their careers were still developing. Alongside them were already established actors, such as Alec Guinness, Steiger, and Ralph Richardson. The cast represented several generations of performers, and each brought a completely different style to David Lean's enormous production. The American Film Institute lists Chaplin, Christie, Courtenay, Guinness, Sharif, Steiger, Tushingham, and Richardson among the film's credited cast, while other cast listings also include performers such as Klaus Kinski, Bernard Kay, and Noel Willman. Omar Sharif became the face of the entire film. Born Michel Dimitri Chaloub in Alexandria, Egypt, he had already established himself as a major Egyptian star before crossing into international cinema. His performance as Yuri Zhivago changed the scale of his career. Yuri was not presented as a traditional action hero. He was a physician, poet, and deeply emotional man caught between personal love and enormous historical forces. Sharif gave him a quiet intensity that made the character vulnerable without making him weak. His chemistry with Julie Christie became one of the defining elements of the movie, and the two actors seemed to embody a love that existed outside ordinary time. Sharif's success after Dr. Zhivago was enormous. He became one of the few Arab actors to achieve genuine international superstardom during Hollywood's golden era. He appeared in major films and became known not only for dramatic performances, but also for his elegance, multilingual abilities, and distinctive screen presence. Yet the glamour of his career did not always translate into happiness in his private life. His marriage to Egyptian actress Faten Hamama ended after years together, and his relationship with his son was affected by the demands of his career and his complicated personal circumstances. Sharif also became famous for his love of gambling, particularly bridge and casino games. His passion for gambling became one of the most frequently discussed aspects of his later life. As the decades passed, the international leading man gradually became an older character actor. The face that audiences remembered from the frozen landscapes of Dr. Zhivago appeared less frequently on screen. Sharif also faced serious health problems later in life, including Alzheimer's disease. There was something especially poignant about that development because his career had been built on the power of memory, audiences remembering his face, his characters, and his performances long after the films ended. Omar Sharif died in Cairo on July 10, 2015, at the age of 83, following a heart attack. His death marked the passing of the actor who had once stood at the center of one of cinema's most famous romances. Today, when viewers watch Dr. Zhivago, they see him forever young, riding through the snow, writing poetry, and searching for Lara. That is one of cinema's strange gifts. The real person grows old, but the image created by the camera does not. Then there was Julie Christie, whose Lara Antipova became one of the most iconic female characters of 1960s cinema. Christie was already an extraordinary young performer when David Lean cast her. Her beauty certainly attracted attention, but it was her emotional intelligence as an actress that made Lara unforgettable. She did not play Lara as simply a romantic heroine. Lara was a woman caught inside a collapsing society, forced to make choices under circumstances that constantly threatened her safety, family, and future. Christie's performance helped establish her as one of Britain's greatest screen stars. The success of Doctor Zhivago followed other important performances and helped turn her into a symbol of the 1960s. Yet Christie was never completely comfortable with the machinery of celebrity. Unlike many stars who embraced publicity and pursued every major Hollywood opportunity, she gradually became more selective. She rejected the idea that success required constant public exposure. Her personal life also became the subject of intense public interest, particularly during her long relationship with actor Warren Beatty. But Christie eventually moved away from the center of celebrity culture. Her later career became more selective, and she chose projects based on artistic interest rather than simply commercial size. By 2025, Julie Christie was still alive at the age of 84, although she remained famously private. She continued to be remembered as one of the defining actresses of British cinema. This is one of the most important corrections to sensational stories, claiming that every major Doctor Zhivago actor had died. Christie survived, and her story is not one of tragic death, but of a remarkable actress who successfully escaped the machinery of fame while preserving her artistic legacy. Geraldine Chaplin had perhaps one of the most extraordinary backgrounds of anyone in the cast. She was the daughter of Charlie Chaplin and actress Una O'Neill, meaning that she was born directly into one of the most famous families in entertainment history. Yet being Charlie Chaplin's daughter was both a privilege and an enormous burden. Every achievement risked being compared with her father's legendary career. In Doctor Zhivago, Chaplin played Tanya Gromyko, Yuri's wife. Tanya is not simply a rival to Lara. She represents another kind of love, the stability, family, and responsibility that Yuri struggles to preserve while his feelings for Lara continue to haunt him. Chaplin brought warmth and dignity to the role, allowing Tanya to remain sympathetic even though the story ultimately centers on Yuri and Lara. Chaplin spent much of her childhood in Europe after her famous father left the United States. She trained in ballet before turning seriously toward acting. Doctor Zhivago became one of the most important early chapters in her international career, but she did not allow herself to remain trapped within her father's shadow. She built an extensive career in European and international cinema, working with directors from different countries and appearing in films in several languages. Her private life included a long relationship with Spanish filmmaker Carlos Saura, with whom she had a son, Shane. She later married cinematographer Patricio Castilla. Chaplin also endured one of the most disturbing experiences connected to her family when her father's grave became the center of a notorious criminal incident after his death. The ordeal became another chapter in a life that had already been shaped by the unusual realities of being born into one of entertainment history's most famous families. By 2025, Geraldine Chaplin was still alive and active in the world of cinema. Rather than being remembered simply as Charlie Chaplin's daughter, she had established a career of her own. Her survival is another reason the phrase, "all cast died tragically," should not be taken literally. The real story is much more interesting. Some members of this extraordinary ensemble disappeared decades ago, while others continued living and working long after the film's release. Rod Steiger played Victor Komarovsky, one of the film's most complicated and unsettling characters. Komarovsky is ambitious, manipulative, and morally compromised. He becomes deeply connected to Lara's life, and Steiger's performance gave the character an intensity that could make audiences uncomfortable even when he was doing very little. Steiger was known for his powerful acting style. He had the ability to transform himself completely for demanding roles, and his career eventually included his Oscar-winning performance in the Heat of the Night. But behind the awards and critical acclaim was a man who struggled with emotional and personal difficulties. His childhood was not easy. His family circumstances and early experiences shaped a personality that could be intense and sometimes difficult. His personal relationships were also complicated, and he was married several times. Steiger openly discussed periods of depression and difficulties within his personal life. His career experienced periods of extraordinary success, followed by stretches when he accepted less prestigious work. For Steiger, acting was never simply about celebrity. It was a craft that demanded emotional commitment, and sometimes that commitment came at a personal cost. His health also became increasingly fragile in later years. Rod Steiger died in Los Angeles on July 9, 2002, at the age of 77. His death was caused by complications, including pneumonia and kidney failure following surgery. The man who had played one of Dr. Zhivago's most controversial figures was gone, but his performances survived. When audiences return to the film today, Steiger's Komarovsky remains one of its most memorable presences. Alec Guinness was already an internationally respected actor when he joined Dr. Zhivago. He played General Yevgraf Zhivago, Yuri's half-brother, and one of the characters who helps frame the story. Guinness's role is especially important because Yevgraf appears almost like a bridge between past and present, connecting the personal story of Yuri and Lara with the larger historical forces surrounding them. Guinness had already established himself as one of Britain's great stage and screen performers. He had won an Academy Award for The Bridge on the River Kwai and had worked repeatedly with David Lean. Dr. Zhivago represented another chapter in their professional relationship. But Guinness's career later took an unexpected turn when he became globally recognized by a new generation as Obi-Wan Kenobi in Star Wars. The role made him famous to audiences who might never have encountered his earlier theatrical work. Guinness himself had complicated feelings about the phenomenon and about the enormous fame attached to Star Wars. Away from the screen, he was famously private. He was married to actress Marilla Solomon for decades, and unlike many Hollywood stars, he avoided making his private life part of his public identity. His reserve sometimes made him seem distant, but it was also part of what made him so respected as an actor. In his final years, Guinness battled cancer. He died on August 5, 2000, at the age of 86. His passing removed another giant from the Dr. Zhivago ensemble, yet his legacy extended far beyond the film. He had already secured his place in theatrical history, British cinema, and, through Obi-Wan Kenobi, popular culture around the world. Ralph Richardson played Alexander Gromyko, Tanya's father. Richardson belonged to an older generation of British actors whose reputation was built primarily on theater as well as film. His voice, posture, and presence gave Alexander an authority that fit naturally into the world of Dr. Zhivago. Richardson's life before fame had not been completely straightforward. His parents separated when he was young, and he initially considered a religious path before finding his calling in the arts. He eventually entered theater and became one of Britain's most respected performers. Unlike some of the younger stars who were swept up in the fame of Dr. Zhivago, Richardson was already an established artistic institution. He had performed on stage with some of the greatest actors of his generation and had built a reputation for unusual intelligence and versatility. He was also known for eccentric behavior away from the stage. Richardson could be playful, unpredictable, and unconventional, characteristics that made him memorable among colleagues. His career included numerous acclaimed stage and film performances. On October 10, 1983, Richardson died in London following a stroke. He was 80 years old. His passing marked the end of another important chapter in British acting history. Although modern viewers may remember him first as Alexander Gromyko, his career was much larger than that one role. Klaus Kinski had only a relatively small part in Dr. Zhivago, but even a brief appearance could be memorable when Kinski was involved. He played Kostoy Morsky, an anarchist encountered during the film's turbulent historical journey. Kinski had one of the most controversial personalities in European cinema. His performance